Now, you can't actually move to the light until you've conquered the mind, and conquering the mind is not that difficult. But I could probably count, not to offend anyone, but in this country, I could probably count on my hand on a daily basis how many people are actually free from desire, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. Desire, greed, anger, attachment, and ego. You know, that's your karmic burden. That if you have greed, attachment, sexual desire, lust, ego, desire to manipulate somebody, are attached to things and drive other people because of your own ego, well then you're basically trapped. You're in this material system, in this cycle, and you're going to be born constantly over and over again. And the ones that conquer the mind will move to the light because you've transcended the actual the occupants of the mind. There's life forms and beings out there that would redefine the way we actually think, that are actually not even mind-based. And then there's obviously the machine systems out there, the robots, the reptilians, the greys, the drone greys, almost like the droid or android greys, the ones that have been created to drive technology and machinery and UFOs and self-replicating systems. They're also in that cycle of karma, and if you look at it, they've actually lost the ability to feel. They've lost emotion. Now, a lot of people on this planet have become very cold, and once you conquer, truthful people are happy. A lot of people in the mind-based system and cycle are not happy, and the ones that are happy and are truthful actually still have an understanding of what love is. And love is the combining force of the energy that actually brings the universe together. And the things that scientists can't even understand, how particles get matter and how things are held together, well, that energy in field is actually love. And the power that be, the elite, are trying to move you away from that system. Now, the teachings in India obviously understand that, and this is where you've got the law of one. I keep talking about Vedic and India. I won't actually use the word Hindu, because Hindu actually translated from Persian or Farsi is the word for a thief. So the word Hindu actually means thief. In the origins of India, it was actually Brahma, and there were all schools of Brahma, schools of thought, rishis, Shud, Ved, they were all yogis, different sects, different classes of people that were in different schools of thought and schools of learning, and it was all to do with spirituality, because ultimately everything is spirit. Now, in terms of the Vedic Empire, it is known in the Mahabharata, the story of the war, when descendants or demigods with the higher gods that had breeded with man left this planet 5,000 years ago, and you had hybrid gods that were actually negative entities. Much of what has been characterized in Greek mythology, well, ancient Greek people were actually Indian people, and the previous civilization was connected in Calcutta, Sri Lanka, Atlantis and Greece and India were all part of one spiritual race. I think they call it the sort of like the Indo culture that might have came the lighter skinned ones. Well, that was probably around about 10,000 years ago. My own family history, I would probably say, is in the lines of the Indian, the deep Indian Vedic sort of like genetic line, which were sort of like putting writings and things together around about 6,000 BC, maybe 8,000 BC. So potentially looking at 10 to 12,000 years ago. Now, I believe that it was around about this time when man's understanding actually developed with the help of extraterrestrials, understandings such as meditation, yoga, a holistic mind, inducing astral projecting,
even things along the lines of jumping, dematerializing, where you could actually dematerialize from one place and go somewhere else. So actually transcendence and being able to manipulate matter, those types of things were probably happening in India, as frequent as people watching the TV in this country today. That was the big, phase and the big craze, and it was almost like because extraterrestrial entities could do it, and they had mixed with common man from India. And these teachings were sort of like referenced and written and sort of like made into doctrines and all of this thing about how the universe works, energy, and quantum physics, and quantum materialization, and how you can actually, the likes of Buddha and the likes of Guru Nanak, the likes of people along the lines of even in the Middle East, and how Muhammad actually found energy, but might have had some type of influence from negative entities, and how it was almost like a massive awakening that occurred in India. And this was probably 4 or 5 phases down the line. At the time of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Krishna, Lakshmi, Durga, Sita, and others, sort of like this was around about 1 million years ago. There's no exact figure, but I believe that the original time when Earth was like Pandora was an amazing world paradise, where you didn't need machines to do the way we use machines today. That technology was built within the brain and spirit. And if you look at the sort of like the common sense to all of this, it makes sense that the reason why we only operate on 5 to 10% brain function, process and capacity is because that human brain hasn't grown. What should happen if Darwin was correct is the brain was tiny, operated on 5 to 8%, and as we've developed and we've become advanced and now we can go to the moon, that's modern man's thinking. That's sort of like the Western teachings and thinking. Our brain should have grown by now, and we should be operating on high brain capacity if Darwin was correct. Darwin's theory, I call it, is flawed, because why have we got a large capacity brain, and why is that only scientifically? You can look at the research, go onto Google and do the analysis yourself and find out what the scientific research has found in terms of how much brain we actually use when we're awake and how much brain we use when we're asleep. So the evidence is there that we've devolved, and this is the thing this is devolution and evolution occurs, but we didn't just rise up from monkeys straight away. There has definitely been some divine intervention with man. Now, if origins of man go back to the east, in Africa, in the Middle East, and how people from Africa went to the Middle East, and how they went from the Middle East into India, and then potentially went from there into Europe, they've even analysed DNA and said that people in Europe are carrying the same genetics as people, thousands of years ago in the East. This Vedic Empire in India, around about 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, was first what was a combination of hybrid form and normal man that was beginning to develop abilities and use the brain properly. And it's almost a little bit like in my technology posts on my website, where I've said that we could, whereas we now use mobile phones and telecommunications, there was a time when everybody was telepathic, and it happens today in today's it happens in today's recent times with twins, you know, where they can feel each other's pain, and sisters and mothers, and you know, the mother's children, and you know, the mother can feel what the child is feeling, and this empathic connection that they have, where they can have dreams about the children or have dreams about each other, and they know something is wrong, or you know, the phone will actually ring when somebody's just about to have a heart attack, and things like this are well documented. And these types of these are not coincidences, they are coincidences, because it's rhetoric. You can actually you know, decipher the actual language, and even Sanskrit, the language, like I've said before, forms 70% of all of the languages. They've said it's more efficient than Latin, and it's more efficient than Greek. It's a beautiful language. It predates Hebrew. Gurbani predates Hebrew, and this is the original tongue, which is where the magic is. Now, the saying them actual words, when you actually pronounce words like dharma and karma, it is the thing. You know, you're not saying it, you're not describing it. It actually materializes when you when you actually pronounce the word. And again, we're talking about vibration, energy, and sound, and how, you know, technology was controlled with thought, and how technology was controlled with sound. And you know, it's a massive story. It's a massive cycle where negative aliens could have come to Earth, could have took some of that knowledge, seen some of that knowledge, and then, you know, it's almost like a cycle. They've then used that, and you know, this is why aliens have thought-based technology, because it's all come from the same teaching. There's always a master right at the top, and like you've got the pyramid system now, you know, and you've got the most negative, most evil, corrupt people right at the top. They've actually perverted the whole system, because the God, or the creator, the infinite light, the infinite consciousness creator, is right at the top, and he has his people working for him. He has his, you know, his managers, he has his supervisors, he has his foremans, and they're all on different planets, and they're all in different forms. And this is why you know, people think on a collective basis, because somebody writes a song, because it comes into the head. They spend a day or something writing music, they put the music out there, it goes viral, gets into the charts, and all of a sudden you've got 6 million people listening to that song, thinking, wow, you know, this connects with us. The reason why is because we're all based on a collective, and you know, originally everything just comes from that one source.